Brian's first love hit someone while driving under the influence, and the first thing he did was take her away from the scene. He's a lawyer, fully knowledgeable about the law. He helped his first love create the illusion that she fled out of fear and then brought her to surrender the next day, after she had sobered up. He also contacted the victim's family, hoping to obtain their forgiveness. What he didn't know was that the person his first love had killed was me. And he was my only family. Brian, I hit someone and killed them, what should I do? At 1:30 a.m., Diana called Brian, crying for help. Brian was shocked, but quickly regained his composure. Don't move, and don't call the police. Wait for me. Okay, I'll wait. Brian arrived at the scene 20 minutes later. Diana clung to his clothes like he was her lifeline, crying her heart out. It was as if she was the one who had been run over, not the woman lying on the ground, her body a bloody mess. You've been drinking? Brian smelled the alcohol on Diana, his expression complicated. Brian, being a lawyer, was well aware of the legal consequences of driving under the influence resulting in death. He was always righteous, standing up for justice, never afraid of power or money. But in that moment, he hesitated. He glanced at the victim lying on the ground, crushed beyond recognition by Diana's car. The body, especially the head, was a gory mix of blood and brain matter, unidentifiable. So Brian didn't recognize that the person was me. I was still wearing the blue dress he had helped me pick out during our last shopping trip together. But I should have known by then, Brian had never truly cared about me. Why would he remember what I was wearing today? I watched him calmly survey the scene. As a battle-hardened lawyer, his counter-surveillance instincts had kicked in. This was a dark, remote alley, with no people around, no traffic lights, no crosswalk, and no security cameras. Even the streetlight nearby was broken. I saw a confident glint flash in his eyes. It was the same look he had whenever he was about to win a case. He had already figured out how to get Diana out of this, even if it meant going against his conscience and ethics. We'll leave first. Once you've sobered up, I'll take you to turn yourself in. Will I go to prison? Diana asked nervously. Brian replied with certainty, no. No? How could he say that? Even when I'm dead, my heart can still ache. Ache so badly. Before leaving with Diana, Brian had her remove and destroy the car's dashcam footage. Of course, he needed to get rid of the evidence. That way, he would never uncover the truth. My soul hovered above, forced to follow Brian as he left the scene. Before I departed, I glanced back at my body. Scattered next to me was a container of seafood porridge. I had packed it for Brian, because he said he'd be working late tonight. I was worried he'd skip dinner, so I came all the way here to buy his favorite porridge for him. But he hadn't even looked at it. Brian took Diana to a deserted beach. After instructing her not to wander off, he hurried home. The house was pitch black. In the past, no matter how late it got, I would always leave a small light on for him. But Brian didn't notice anything strange. He went straight to the closet, grabbed one of my dresses, and left. His body seemed to hesitate for a moment at the door. I wasn't sure what he was thinking. Not that it mattered. Because the next second, he left without a second glance. He didn't even check to see if I was in the bedroom. Brian rushed back to the beach and had Diana wash herself in the ocean and change clothes. The smell of alcohol would raise suspicion with the police. He also brought plenty of water for her to drink, to help dilute the alcohol in her system. After all that, by 10 a.m., Brian drove Diana to the police station to turn herself in. On the way, they rehearsed their story. Brian coached her, when the police ask why you fled, say you were scared. You've never been through something like this, and you ran out of instinct. Tell them after the accident, you went to the beach alone and stayed there all night until you had the courage to turn yourself in. Say that before surrendering, you called me, and I came with you to the station. Tell them you were in that area because you were having dinner with a friend, but you weren't drinking. I've already coordinated with your friend. If the police ask her, she'll vouch for you. After giving her these instructions, he added, I'll handle the rest. Brian's calm tone reassured Diana, giving her a sense of security. In that moment, I saw her eyes well up with tears again. She said, "Brian, thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you." Brian answered firmly, "You'll never be without me." Hovering above, listening to their conversation, I suddenly started to laugh. I laughed so hard my heart ached. 10 years of devotion couldn't compare to a single glance from his first love. Brian and Diana were childhood sweethearts, a pair seemingly made in heaven. Later, Brian's family fell into hard times, and he moved to a small town, while Diana's family emigrated abroad. The difference in their status and the vast distance between them caused the two to drift apart. I met Brian during college and fell in love with him at first sight. I had never seen a man more handsome than him. What touched me even more was the gentle heart hidden beneath his seemingly cold exterior. I once saw him feeding a stray cat, and the warmth in his eyes was something I had never witnessed before, as if he were bathed in divine light. I spent 4 years by his side, but I never dared to confess my feelings. On the night of our graduation farewell dinner, he asked me, "Do you like me?" I was stunned, and my face immediately flushed red. Almost everyone in the school knew I liked Brian. How could he not know? He simply chose to ignore it. He then said, "I have nothing right now. But if you're willing to fight with me, we can start dating." In the flickering light, I couldn't clearly see his expression at that moment. I also didn't know that Brian had a first love he couldn't let go of. I thought the heavens had finally smiled upon me. I am an orphan. From the moment I was born, I've been abandoned, never feeling warmth, never experiencing good fortune. Only Brian made me feel the kindness of this world. I stood by Brian as he rose from an unknown lawyer to establishing his own independent law firm, becoming a household name. But the journey wasn't easy. Brian was once nearly killed in the street over a case. For another case, he went 3 days and nights without sleep. He even infiltrated a criminal gang alone to gather evidence. Over time, his health deteriorated, and his stomach was in terrible shape due to neglect. To take care of him, I voluntarily resigned from my job. Before that, I was a social journalist. Early on, when Brian had nothing, we survived on my salary. But my job often required travel, and we hardly saw each other. After Brian was rushed to the hospital with a perforated ulcer, I made the decision to give up the job I loved. I don't know if it was my sacrifice or my meticulous care that moved him, but after winning a big case, in his excitement, he proposed to me. I could feel that Brian's feelings for me were gradually deepening. He even found time to go shopping with me, picking out dresses he knew I liked. But then Diana returned to the country, completely shattering the peaceful and beautiful life Brian and I had built together. The first time I heard about Diana was on my birthday. I had prepared Brian's favorite dishes, waiting to celebrate with him when he came home. But I waited the whole evening, and by the time the food had gone cold, Brian finally returned, slightly drunk. I wasn't angry. I knew he had many social engagements, and I understood how hard he worked. I was even worried that his stomach might be upset from the drinking, after all the effort I had put in to nurse it back to health over 3 years. I gently helped him to bed, and at that moment, I heard him murmuring something. At first, I didn't understand what he was saying. The next day, I went to Brian's law firm to bring him porridge to soothe his stomach and sober him up. In his office, I met Diana for the first time, fashionable, tall, and beautiful. She greeted me like the lady of the house. "You must be Brian's wife." "I'm Diana. Brian and I grew up together. I've been living abroad and only just returned last night." That day, Diana added me on WeChat, saying she was new in the country and wanted to make more friends. She even complimented the porridge I made, saying Brian was lucky to have me. After that, I frequently saw Diana's WeChat moments, where she shared little bits of her life with Brian. Whenever Diana called, no matter how late or how busy Brian was, he would drop everything to see her. He would say, "Meow Meow is afraid of the dark. Her power's out, so I'm going to keep her company." Or, "It's Meow Meow's birthday, and she doesn't have many friends. I'm going to help her celebrate." Or, "Meow Meow is sick, and she doesn't have any family here in the country. I'm going to check on her." Countless times, Brian left me for Diana. But every time, he reassured me, don't overthink it. There's nothing between Meow Meow and me. I kept telling myself that there was nothing between them. But now, seeing it with my own eyes, I realized how foolish I had been. How pathetic. Brian and Diana arrived at the police station. As soon as they stepped inside, they overheard officers discussing the car accident from the night before. The person who reported it was a small restaurant owner. He recognized the skirt the victim was wearing. She came in late last night to pick up takeout for her husband, one officer said. Her husband has a stomach problem and only their porridge keeps his pain away. But it's been a whole night, and no one's seen her husband looking for her, another officer added. The victim is unrecognizable, her face is too badly damaged to identify, and her phone was crushed beyond repair, including the SIM card. We'll have to wait for the phone to be restored or use DNA to confirm her identity. Still no trace of the hit-and-run driver? The officer asked. We're reviewing all city surveillance footage, but it seems the driver skillfully avoided all traffic cameras, like they vanished into thin air, another responded. Could it have been premeditated? The officer speculated. We'll have to wait for the forensic report and the victim's identity before we can investigate further. As the officers discussed the accident, I saw Diana trembling. Brian noticed Diana's fear and reached out to hold her hand tightly, offering her comfort. Don't be afraid. Diana nodded, and the two of them walked in together. We are here to turn ourselves in, Brian said loudly. Everyone at the police station turned to look at them. Brian continued, the perpetrator of last night's car accident is Diana. The police immediately verified Diana's identity and took her into the interrogation room. Brian waited outside for her. My soul was forced to follow Brian wherever he went. I wasn't sure if this was heaven's punishment for me. People who are blinded by love don't deserve to be reborn. At that moment, he approached an officer and asked about the victim. I heard earlier that the victim's family hasn't claimed the body. The officer glanced at him. Brian pulled out his lawyer's license. The officer stopped holding back. No, we're still waiting for DNA confirmation. Didn't you say the victim was buying porridge for her husband? Hasn't he reported her missing by now? Who knows, the officer responded with a hint of sarcasm. There are plenty of unfaithful men in the world. For all we know, her husband could be off with another woman. We've seen it all. Brian nodded. With all the cases he had handled, this was nothing new. He added, I'm the attorney representing the suspect. Once you reach the victim's family, please notify me immediately. We'll do our best to seek their forgiveness. Floating above, I found it all rather amusing. He didn't even realize that he was the victim's family. The only family, in fact. Of course, he would forgive Diana. After asking a few more questions, Brian went back to the interrogation room to wait for Diana. Once she finished her statement, she was to be taken into custody. Causing a fatal hit-and-run made her liable for criminal charges. But Brian posted her bail, using his years of connections with law enforcement. He quickly secured her release on bail that very night. Diana, can you come to my place? Diana asked pitifully as Brian drove her home. I'm scared to be alone. Not tonight, Brian declined. I was a little surprised. I thought he never said no to Diana. Take a shower and change your clothes, Brian added. It turned out he just felt dirty and didn't want to offend Diana with the smell. Will you come tomorrow, then? We'll see tomorrow, Brian replied. I need to help prepare your case materials over the next few days. By the way, I asked at the police station earlier. The victim's family still hasn't come forward. Diana's expression flickered with something strange, but Brian didn't suspect a thing. He continued, this means the victim may not have had a good relationship with her family, which works in our favor. Once we contact them, as long as we compensate them adequately, your case will be much simpler. Thank you, Brian. Diana's eyes reddened with emotion. Who wouldn't be moved by such devotion? Even I, floating above them, was touched by how deep Brian's feelings for Diana ran. After dropping Diana off, Brian returned home. The house was still pitch dark. It was only 9 p.m., and I normally wouldn't go to bed this early. But Brian didn't notice anything strange. How much apathy does it take to ignore something to this extent? I watched as he wearily took off his coat and walked over to the fridge. As he opened it, his gaze paused for a moment. He seemed to have noticed the sticky note I had left on the fridge: "No cold drinks, your stomach can't handle it. Be good." I had even drawn a little smiley face next to the message. Brian's hand hesitated for a second, but then he opened the fridge anyway. I smiled faintly. When had he ever listened to me? Inside the fridge was a small cake. The words on it read, "Happy birthday, my love." I suddenly remembered, it had been Brian's birthday yesterday. Even though we had a minor argument in the morning, when I heard he was working late, I still went out to buy him his favorite seafood porridge. I had wanted to make up with him, not wanting his birthday to end on a bad note. But who would have thought I would die that night? Brian should be happy now, right? Now he can be with Diana without any guilt. I watched as Brian stared at the cake for a long time. A long time passed before he seemed to remember that it had been his birthday and that he hadn't come home last night. He closed the fridge door and finally decided to come looking for me. He called out toward the bedroom, "Luna, I haven't eaten dinner yet, I'm starving." I used to dread hearing him say he was hungry. Whenever he got hungry, his stomach problems would flare up. So, whenever he said that, I would drop whatever I was doing and immediately make his favorite meals. But tonight, all he was met with was silence. "Luna." Brian's voice grew louder. He had never had much patience with me. Still not getting any response from me, Brian became somewhat irritated. He marched toward the bedroom and forcefully pushed the door open. "Seriously? I didn't come home because I had things to do. Why are you being so unreasonable?" What he didn't know was that I wasn't in the bedroom. I wasn't sulking either. I was just dead. I suddenly wondered, what expression would he have when he realized I was truly gone? Indifference? Relief? Or maybe, just maybe, a flicker of emotion? Brian stood frozen for a moment. He didn't see me in the bedroom. Normally, at this hour, I'd definitely be home. Even if I were upset with him, I wouldn't go anywhere. I had nowhere to go. After confirming I wasn't in the house, he impatiently picked up his phone to call me. The automated voice of a woman came through. "The number you have dialed is currently turned off." Brian didn't bother to listen to the rest and hung up, his expression turning sour. He stormed over to the fridge, pulled out a bottle of cold water, and, almost defiantly, chugged more than half of it in one go. I knew, right then, his stomach would start hurting. Sure enough, he soon clutched his abdomen, sweating from the pain. He frantically searched for medication but didn't know what to take. After all, it had always been me who took care of that. He was practically incapable of living without me. Frustrated, he threw the medicine box on the floor, then picked up his phone again, hesitated for a moment, and finally dialed a number. A hesitant voice answered on the other end. "Brian? Is Luna with you?" Brian asked, trying to suppress his stomach pain. The person on the other side let out a cold laugh. "You're calling me to find Luna?" It was Amelia, my college roommate. "Aren't you two friends?" Brian said coldly. "Friends?" Amelia's laugh became more sarcastic. "You still remember that Luna and I are friends? But when I asked you for help, how quickly you turned me down." "I handled everything according to the law, fairly and impartially," Brian said righteously. I couldn't help but laugh. Fair and impartial? I used to believe he was so upright, so when Amelia's younger brother was criminally detained for a fight, and she asked Brian for help to pull some strings, he flatly refused. I was torn, but I didn't blame him. Even though that led to me and Amelia, the only friend I had, falling out. But now? He could help his first love with connections and even fabricate false evidence, betraying his so-called integrity. He wasn't noble, he just wouldn't tarnish his purity for me. Exactly. Brian, the great lawyer. How could someone like me expect to be helped by you? Amelia's voice was dripping with sarcasm. So yeah, I cut ties with Luna a long time ago. She didn't tell you? Brian didn't respond that he didn't know anything about me. He didn't know Amelia was my only friend. He didn't know that back in college, when everyone looked down on me for chasing after him, Amelia was the only one who encouraged me. But because of him, I lost that friendship. I understood Amelia's stance. If I were in her shoes, I wouldn't have been able to stay friends with someone whose husband refused to lend a hand for something so simple. I knew Amelia didn't blame me. But out of basic human decency, she couldn't pretend like everything was normal between us. Brian, I don't know what happened between you and Luna, but I'll tell you this, if you hurt her, you'll regret it for the rest of your life, Amelia said sharply. You have no idea how much Luna has sacrificed for you. My business with Luna is none of your concern, Brian replied, his face darkening. Sure. But I feel sorry for Luna, Amelia said before abruptly hanging up the phone. Brian's face turned completely black. He threw his phone onto the couch and got up to search for the medicine box again, the pain clearly getting to him. This time, he patiently read through the instructions for the stomach pills and took a few. After a while, his expression began to improve. He picked up his phone again and sent me a WeChat message. Luna, stop messing around and come home. I'm busy. I don't have time for your tantrums. I looked at the message he had typed out, and my heart sank. He wasn't worried about whether something had happened to me. He was only upset that I was wasting his time and ruining his mood. Yesterday was his birthday. When he was leaving in the morning, I had told him I'd celebrate with him in the evening. He had been too busy texting to hear what I was saying. I leaned over to see his phone. He was texting Diana. Diana was wishing him a happy birthday, and he was thanking her. Then Diana invited him to dinner that night. I couldn't help myself and raised my voice. Brian. He paused and turned to look at me. Come home early tonight. I'll be waiting for you to celebrate your birthday. I have a case that might go late tonight, don't wait for me. Brian dismissed me right away. Is it really the case that will keep you late, or is it Diana wanting to celebrate your birthday with you? I asked bluntly. Brian's expression darkened instantly. Luna, how many times do I have to tell you? There's nothing going on between me and Diana. Stop making things up. Nothing? How can you say there's nothing when all it takes is one call from her, and you're rushing over immediately? After holding it in for so long, I finally exploded. I've explained it to you. She's all alone here in the country, with no one to look after her. So she needs you to take care of her? What exactly is she to you? In what capacity are you taking care of her? Brian, don't forget, you're a married man. Enough. Brian's face was cold. If you won't listen to my explanation, then think whatever you want. He stormed out, not caring how heartbroken I felt in that moment. That night, I saw Diana's post on social media. She was out having dinner with other friends, and Brian wasn't there. Only then did I realize that he really did have a case to work on, and wasn't spending time with Diana. I felt guilty and ashamed for having doubted him. In this relationship, I've always been the one who lowers myself. Every time we argue, it's me who apologizes first, especially now, when I was the one in the wrong. So, I called Brian's assistant. The assistant told me he wouldn't finish until around 2 or 3 in the morning. By that time, Brian would have already had dinner, but I went out at 1 a.m. to pack up some seafood porridge for him, thinking it would be easier on his stomach after working late. I also thought we could eat some cake and blow out candles together. I even changed into the dress he had bought me. But now I'm dead. Dead under the wheels of Diana's car. And he's doing everything he can to clear her name. That night, I didn't come home, and I didn't reply to Brian's messages. But he didn't ask about my whereabouts either. After taking his stomach medicine, he cooked himself a bowl of noodles. Having not cooked for himself in a long time, maybe it didn't taste very good. After a few bites, he set the bowl aside, went to the bathroom to shower, and then went to bed. My absence didn't seem to affect him at all. The next morning, he got up early and went to his study to work on Diana's case. I watched him gather the evidence. First, the streetlights were broken, making the road too dark, which affected Diana's driving. Second, there was no traffic light at the intersection, making it difficult to notice a pedestrian suddenly appearing. Third, the accident happened at 1:30 a.m., a time when the streets are usually empty, affecting the driver's expectations. Fourth, the victim's family's forgiveness. I couldn't help but laugh when I saw the word forgiveness. How could he be so certain? Fifth, Diana is a young woman, timid, and her initial reaction to flee was understandable, not an attempt to evade responsibility. Sixth, Diana turned herself involuntarily. Brian spent the whole day preparing all the evidence that worked in Diana's favor, meticulously putting everything together. That evening, Diana couldn't resist calling him again. She had messaged him earlier, but Brian had refused, saying he was working on the case. "Brian, are you done yet?" Diana asked pitifully. "Almost. Can you stay with me? I can't sleep alone. I didn't sleep at all last night, and I've been up all day. When I do sleep, I have nightmares." Brian glanced at the time and rubbed his stomach. "I'll come over after I eat dinner. How about you come eat with me? I don't have much of an appetite eating alone." Brian hesitated for a moment but agreed. "I'll be there soon. I'll wait for you." Brian closed his laptop and left the study. He glanced towards the bedroom, his grip tightening on his phone, but he still turned and left. "He was waiting for me to apologize, just like I always did." Brian drove to Diana's house. Diana was wearing pink pajamas, looking frail and worn out. But if you looked closely, you'd see that her seemingly conservative pajamas had a hidden charm. Just by bending down slightly, her inner beauty became visible. At that moment, she was crouching down to hand Brian his slippers. Diana affectionately pulled Brian to sit at the table. "I ordered takeout. Let's eat together." Brian looked at the spicy dishes in front of him, frowning slightly. He couldn't eat spicy food, it always triggered his stomach problems. Did Diana not know? Or had Brian decided that for her, he would endure anything, go along with anything? And here I was, still fooling myself. Loving someone or not, it's so obvious. "Why aren't you eating?" Diana asked him. "Is it not to your taste? These are all my favorite Sichuan dishes." "It's not that." Brian shook his head. "I'm just not that hungry." Diana picked up some food and placed it on his plate, telling him he was too thin and needed to eat more. Brian, suppressing his discomfort, ate it. He might never know that my favorite food was Sichuan cuisine too. "Has there been any news from the police about the victim?" Diana suddenly asked. "No," Brian replied after drinking some water. "It seems the deceased really had a poor relationship with their family. It's been 48 hours, and they haven't filed a missing persons report." Diana nodded, her downcast eyes hiding a trace of nervousness. "When they finally reach the family, along with the evidence I've gathered, you'll likely only get a 1-year suspended sentence," Brian reassured her. "Don't worry. You won't go to prison." "Brian, I don't even know how to thank you." Diana's eyes filled with tears. Brian hadn't responded yet. Diana's hand was already on Brian's. Brian froze for a moment and didn't push her away. Diana said, "I don't need you to take responsibility." As she spoke, Diana held Brian's hand and moved it towards her waist. "I floated above, watching these two betrayers. They probably don't know that I haven't left, even in death. If only I could scare them to death." Just as I thought everything was about to proceed as expected, Brian pushed Diana away. Shao, don't do this," Brian said. "I'm married." "I know. I don't care about that. I only care about you. But I do care. I don't want you to be despised. I'm willing to do anything for you. If it weren't for my parents forcing me to go abroad, I wouldn't have left you. Now that I'm back, it's only for you." Diana's eyes were filled with deep affection. "I'm sorry," Brian still refused. He didn't even give Diana a chance to act on her own advances, leaving her home quickly. Maybe he was afraid he'd change his mind? Actually, whether Brian and Diana had an affair wouldn't surprise me. If they loved each other, it would be normal for them to be intimate. Not having an affair would just be Brian's moral boundary or a desire not to wrong Diana. After all, a mistress is an unspeakable existence. Brian returned to his car, breathing heavily. He held his stomach, clearly in pain. Even so, he wouldn't show it in front of Diana. He endured the discomfort and went home. The house was still dark. I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination, but it seemed like I saw a trace of disappointment in Brian's eyes. Brian's eyes. The next moment, I saw him calmly taking his stomach medicine, then heading to the bathroom to shower before lying down in bed. He didn't care whether I came back or not. What mattered to him was that someone wasn't around to serve him. Late at night, I thought Brian had fallen asleep, but suddenly he sat up and took out his phone to call me. If I hadn't seen his awake eyes, I would have thought he was sleepwalking. Naturally, no one answered the call. He sent me a message, "Luna, stop being willful and come home. The cake is still here, and I'll eat it with you." It was rare for Brian to soften. Though his tone was still stern, it was quite unusual. Was he genuinely softening, or did he want me to come back so he could divorce me? It was obvious Diana couldn't wait any longer. The next day, Brian received a call from the police station. They said they had confirmed the identity of the deceased and asked him to come to the station. Brian immediately notified Diana, "Xiao, come downstairs in 10 minutes. I'll take you to the police station. We've contacted the victim's family." Contacted them? Diana seemed surprised. After all, she knew very well that Brian was my only family. Brian quickly picked up Diana, and on the way to the police station, he explained how they could obtain the family's forgiveness. I noticed Diana's gaze at Brian was full of unspoken words. Finally, she asked, "Will the family definitely forgive me?" "Trust me, they will," Brian said confidently. Of course, they would. I was convinced of this fact. The two of them entered the police station. The police led them into the mediation room. Brian asked, "Where is the family?" The police just looked at Brian. He was puzzled. Then the police asked him, "Have you seen your wife these past few days? Why are you suddenly asking about her?" Brian was somewhat impatient. As a lawyer, he should be perceptive. But he was only annoyed with me. "You only need to answer my questions," the police said sternly. "I haven't seen her," Brian replied. "We had a quarrel a few days ago, and she left home." "But what does that have to do with today's case? Are you not a lawyer?" The police's tone was somewhat sarcastic. At that moment, Brian seemed to sense something. The police didn't keep him in suspense and said directly, "We've confirmed the identity of the deceased through DNA. The deceased is your wife, Luna." Brian stared blankly at the police, disbelief in his eyes. "Who did you say?" "Your wife, Luna." The police handed Brian the verification documents. Brian flipped through them. There was a picture of me, my face unrecognizable in death, and the blue dress stained with blood. "No, it's not possible. How can it be Luna?" Brian's eyes were filled with panic. His hands were trembling. His whole body shook. His eyes seemed to suddenly turn red. Caught off guard, I floated above, watching Brian's apparent distress with indifference. Why was he sad? Isn't this just helping him and Diana? Isn't it now effortless for them to get the family's forgiveness? What's there to be sad about? Who is he putting on this act for? The facts are clear. You are now the only family of the victim. How you negotiate is up to you, the police said coldly. I'll take this statement. Brian covered his face with his hands. Between his fingers, I seemed to see something wet trickling out. Brian was crying. Crying for me? Could it be tears of joy? Diana stayed by Brian's side, and when his emotions had calmed a bit, she spoke. Brian, I really didn't know the person I hit was Luna. By the time I realized, she was already lying on the ground, motionless. I really didn't know it was her. If I had known, I'd rather it had been me who died. Brian slowly lowered his hands. His eyes were red and frightening. He stared at Diana with a cold, terrifying gaze. Diana seemed to be startled by Brian's expression. Her voice trembled with tears. Brian, you'll forgive me, won't you? You said the family would definitely forgive me. Now you're the family. Diana reached for Brian's hand, but Brian suddenly pushed her away. Unlike his gentleness from last night, this time he nearly knocked Diana to the ground. Diana was completely shocked. The police frowned. "Calm down, this is the police station." Brian turned and walked away without giving Diana a chance to reconcile. Diana hurried to catch up with him. "I heard the police sarcastically say, the person is dead. What's with the pretense of deep feelings? The police really do speak for me." Outside the police station, Diana desperately caught up with Brian, clinging to his clothes. "Brian, don't do this. You're scaring me." "Let go of me," Brian said coldly. "I know you're upset. I'm upset too. I'd rather it had been me who died than Luna. But you just told me that the dead can't come back to life, and the living should look on the bright side. That's the greatest comfort for the deceased." Diana cried as she spoke. Brian probably didn't expect that the words he taught Diana would end up being used on him. "Let go of me." Brian's face twisted with rage, threatening her. Diana was terrified by Brian's appearance. She had probably never seen Brian so angry before. "I won't let go, Brian. I won't let go. If you really can't forgive me, I'll turn myself in again. I'll give my life for Luna. But my feelings for you will never let go," Diana said, turning to head back to the police station. She had only taken a couple of steps when Brian grabbed her. I hovered above, almost laughing at their scene. How could Brian really let Diana get hurt? At that moment, Diana looked at Brian with hopeful eyes, her voice soft and almost melting. "Brian, give me some time. I need to calm down." With that, Brian got in his car and drove away. He went straight home. After a moment of losing control at the police station, Brian was now utterly calm. He showed no sadness or expression. For his death, he only needed to be sad for a few minutes. At that moment, Brian just stared blankly at the ceiling of the house. After a while, he went to the fridge and took out the birthday cake. He ate it alone, slowly. My death really had no effect on him. How could I expect him to have any reaction to my death? Brian spent half the morning at home, then went to the police station in the afternoon to claim the body. After the autopsy, the body was even more gruesome. I saw Brian staring at the body coldly. He looked at me, broken and lying in the morgue, unmoved. Then he called Diana. They went to the police mediation room again, and this time, Brian signed the forgiveness letter without hesitation, right in front of the police. The family and the perpetrator finally reached a settlement. Diana didn't need to go to prison. Walking out of the police station, the sun was glaring and blinding. It made my spirit squint and cry uncontrollably due to the sudden brightness. "Brian, thank you." Diana looked at Brian with affectionate eyes. "Now that Luna is gone, I'll take good care of you in her place. Get lost." Brian suddenly shouted. Diana, startled, wanted to reach for his hand but froze. "I never want to see you again," Brian said coldly. "There will be other lawyers to handle your case." With that, Brian walked away without looking back. I looked back at Diana, seeing the unhidden resentment and malice in her eyes. Brian sent my body to the funeral home. The police gave Brian all of my belongings, including my repaired phone. In the morning hall, only Brian was there. He didn't notify anyone. Just him, beside my cold coffin. I guess I wasn't worth much effort for him. He suddenly took out my phone and browsed through its contents. I had few apps, but I had a habit of writing diaries on it. I saw Brian suddenly open my notebook. I felt a pang of panic. I didn't want him to see it. I didn't want him to see my foolishness even after death. But I couldn't stop it. I watched as he opened the journal. "I think I've fallen for a boy. He's so handsome. The way he feeds stray cats is so warm. But he probably doesn't like me, does he? I'm so ordinary. All the students at school laugh at me, saying I'm overestimating myself by trying to reach out to a talented student from the law department. I never intended to reach out to him. I just want to be by his side. Because I liked Brian, my roommates isolated me. Only Amelia stood by me. She said there's nothing wrong with loving someone. Everyone should be brave and be themselves. Amelia is my first friend in life and the only one I have. Having a friend is wonderful. On graduation night, Brian said he could be with me. Has heaven suddenly started favoring me? If all the suffering and pain I've endured was for meeting Brian, then I think it's worth it, and I'm very lucky. Brian's work isn't going well. That's okay. Even if things are always tough for him, I can support him. Brian finally got a case. I'm happy for him. Brian won the case. I'm happy for him. Brian has a perforated ulcer and is hospitalized. It's so painful. I want to take good care of him. I resigned. No matter how much I love my job. But for Brian, I won't regret it. My period has been delayed for over 10 days. I'm pregnant. I nervously asked Brian if he wanted a child now. He said no, without any hesitation. I had Amelia accompany me for the abortion. Amelia scolded me for being foolish. I just didn't want to burden Brian. Brian has become an incredibly successful lawyer. He has his own law firm. He's amazing. Amelia's brother was arrested for fighting while drunk. Amelia hoped Brian could help her brother while he was in custody, but Brian refused. Amelia said Brian doesn't love me. No. Brian just has his own sense of justice. Amelia blocked me. I lost my only friend. Brian proposed to me. I'm so happy. We didn't have a wedding because Brian was too busy. Diana returned to the country. It turns out Brian isn't indifferent to everyone. Diana said she and Brian are childhood sweethearts and that fate forced them apart. Brian has always liked her. She told me to leave Brian. I didn't agree. Because Brian said he and Diana are nothing. I believe him. I don't know how much longer my trust in Brian will last. He really is different with Diana. Very different. Today is Brian's birthday. But this morning we argued because of Diana. I misunderstood Brian. After he gets off work, I'll properly apologize to him. Brian once said I look good in a blue dress. Does he still like me? The diary ends here. I saw Brian's tears streaming down his face, large and continuous. His suppressed sobs made him look very mournful. But I don't quite understand. What is he in pain about? Guilt? But in the end, he still signed the reconciliation letter with Diana. So what does this regret even mean? I floated calmly above, watching Brian. I felt nothing but amusement. I don't know how long it was before Brian's phone rang. I saw his emotions gradually settling. It was easy for him to dissipate all his sadness for me. Fortunately, I no longer have any expectations of him. He answered the call, returning to his normal self. Hello. Is this Lawyer Lou? Who are you? I have something good. If you agree to be my defense lawyer for free and win the case, I promise this will not be made public. What are you talking about? You'll see when you look. The caller hung up. Soon after, a friend request appeared on WeChat. Brian accepted it. The next moment, the person sent a video. Brian opened the video. Watching it, I couldn't help but feel a bit of dark amusement. Isn't this what they call poetic justice? The video showed the moment Diana hit me. It was likely taken from a hidden place. The video starts with me being knocked to the ground by Diana for the first time. The pain made it impossible for me to get up, only the agony in my mind made me keep pleading, help me, call an ambulance, please. I can't die, my husband's birthday is today. I need to celebrate it with him. In the video, I'm in extreme pain. Diana got out of the driver's seat. Her initial panic suddenly turned calm when she saw me. Luna? I tried to open my eyes to look at her, seeing the malice flash in her eyes. Heh. She smiled cruelly. This is what you asked for, Luna. What are you going to do? I looked at her in fear. Brian loves me. It's because he married you that he rejected me. If you die, Brian and I can be together. No, it's not like that. Please don't kill me. Please, Luna, I can only say you have bad luck. After leaving those harsh words, Diana got back in the car and drove over me, crushing my head under her tire. Then the video showed Diana crying and asking Brian for help. After that, Brian arrived. His mind and eyes were entirely focused on Diana. He quickly took her away from the scene. The video ended. I saw Brian's tightly clenched fists, exerting force. But I couldn't discern his emotions. I wondered if he was relieved that he had such a video and not that it had been handed over directly to the police. Brian's phone rang again. The caller said deviously, "As long as you agree to my conditions, I guarantee that the person you like won't come to harm, and you won't be implicated as an accomplice." Brian hung up the phone immediately. He didn't speak. Usually, silence means acquiescence. But his moral boundaries prevented him from saying it outright. I saw him stand up from the floor and then call Diana. "Where are you?" "At home." "I'll come over right away." Brian left my funeral hall and went to Diana's place. When Diana saw him, she threw herself into Brian's arms. "Brian, I thought you really didn't want me anymore." Brian didn't push her away. He let her hug him, crying with a face full of tears. After a long while, Diana finally looked up from Brian's embrace, her eyes red and pitiful. "Brian, you won't abandon me, will you?" Brian pushed Diana away from him coldly. He said, "Didn't you know that night you hit and killed Luna?" "How could I know? I was scared out of my wits." Diana defended herself, looking innocent and pure. It was a stark contrast to her cruel demeanor in the video. I saw Brian suddenly start to laugh. His laughter was frenzied. Diana was shocked by his reaction. She asked him in confusion, "Brian, what's wrong with you?" Brian took out his phone and showed her the video. "Diana, is this the Luna you claim not to know about?" Diana's face visibly changed, alternating between white and red. She looked at the video in disbelief. "How do you have this video?" To keep something hidden, one must not do it oneself. "No, Brian, it's not what you think. I just. Diana's tears flowed uncontrollably. "I truly love you, that's why I did this." "You love me too, don't you? Now that Luna is dead, we can finally be together. You should be happy, right?" Yes, Brian should be happy. I agreed. "I know you refused me because of your responsibility to Luna. Now that Luna is gone, we can be together. Brian, I did all this for us." Diana suddenly couldn't make a sound because Brian was choking her, preventing her from speaking. I saw Brian's bloodshot eyes filled with cruelty. Diana looked at Brian in terror. But in the final moment, Brian released her. How could he bring himself to kill Diana? He just couldn't accept Diana's dark side. "Brian." Diana collapsed to the ground, looking at him with a pitiful expression. "Have you forgotten the good times we had? Trust me, soon we'll both forget about Luna." Brian crouched down and stared at Diana, speaking each word with precision. "I will never forget Luna." "No." "Ah!" Diana screamed. Brian grabbed Diana's hair and slammed her head forcefully against the ground. "I just don't want you to die so easily. Brian, let me go, let me go. If you kill me, you won't survive either." "Who said I want to live?" "Luna is dead. What's the point of me living?" I almost laughed. This was perhaps the biggest joke I've ever heard in my life. I'm dead, and he finds living meaningless? Has he forgotten he just signed a reconciliation letter with Diana? "Don't kill me, Brian, please don't kill me. I don't want to die." Woo-woo. "I truly did this because I love you." Diana cried and begged for mercy, just like I did that night. But Brian showed no mercy. I watched as he crazily abused Diana, her face a bloody mess. Brian was still not satisfied. He grabbed Diana and dragged her towards the balcony. We were on the 22nd floor. A fall from this height would mean certain death. And a very gruesome one. "No, Brian, please don't. I was wrong, I truly realize my mistake. Please don't kill me." Brian smiled coldly. He said, "How did you treat Luna when she begged you?" "I almost caused Luna to die with regrets because of you. You should pay with your life." The next moment, Brian let go of her. Diana fell from the 22nd floor. The sound of the fall was a sickening thud. A pool of blood spread across the ground, and the scene was too horrific to bear. Brian returned to my funeral hall. He had changed out of his blood-stained clothes and cleaned himself up. He stood in front of my ice coffin, looking at my corpse, and said, "Luna, I'm sorry." Sorry? But now I don't care at all. I don't care for your apology. I don't care about you at all. I actually liked you, Brian said. If I didn't like you, I wouldn't have married you. It was never just a compromise between us. What about Diana? I just found it amusing. No matter what he says now, it's hard for me to feel any emotional upheaval. I admit I really liked Diana back then, which is why I couldn't resist her advances when she reappeared in my life. But I never meant to betray you. I just, Brian couldn't continue. He probably didn't know how to explain himself. He had his cake and was looking at the pot. He said, "Luna, I regret it. I really regret it. I regret treating you like that. I regret believing Diana's lies. I regret it. Only now do I realize that the person I loved the most was you." His tears fell onto my icy coffin. If I could come back to life, I would get up and tell him to stay away from me. Don't tarnish my path to reincarnation. Luna, I'll join you soon. From now on, let's never be apart again, okay? Brian said with deep affection. No. I shouted my refusal, but he couldn't hear me. If there's a next life, I only hope Brian never appears in my world again. He would only dirty my eyes. Not long after, the police arrived. They restrained Brian. Brian showed no resistance. As he left, he said to my corpse, "Wait for me." No waiting. Not anymore. I've waited enough in my past life. Yet my soul still couldn't resist following him. I watched him being handcuffed by the police as he walked towards the patrol car. At that moment, a large truck was coming down the road. Brian suddenly pushed the police away with all his strength and dashed towards the road. Screech. With a violent screeching sound, Brian was run over by the truck, more gruesomely than I was at the time. At that moment, I felt my soul beginning to dissipate. Only with Brian's death could I be reincarnated. But just as I was about to completely dissipate, I suddenly saw Brian. He seemed to have turned into a soul too. It seemed like he saw me as well. He ran towards me frantically. "Luna, please, don't leave me, please." I had never seen Brian so humble. Who says there's no satisfaction in that? Though, it doesn't really matter, because in the next life, there will be no Luna.